Assembly's live, so come subscribe. Your soul's in trial or simply tired. Your soul medicine, it gets revived. The warrior line, soul tribe. Assembly's live, it's friendly vibes. Your soul medicine.
Welcome to another edition of Warrior Line Podcast Conversations. Another exciting edition of conversation with my good friend. It's Aaron and Jennifer Conversations, coming to you with another very important conversation. Before we get into it, we ask you kindly, please like and subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, share it with your loved ones, share it with your enemy. We don't care. Just we're trying to get the message out of what we're dealing with in our times. And again, we do book reviews, current events, article reviews, TV show reviews, movie reviews. Today we're going to talk about another issue that just really broke out a couple of days ago, 24 to 40 hours ago. Talking about the subject that's happening in Washington, D.C. But again, please share and like. We greatly appreciate it. We thank you for your support and we thank you for listening. Well, we're going to get into it. The topic today is the siege in Washington, D.C. The siege in Washington, D.C., where executive order was issued, where basically in common terminology, D.C. is being taken over by the federal government. Washington, D.C. has a mayor. Washington, D.C. has a chief of police. But this president decided that he's going to take over the city using his authority with some obscure law they dusted out from somewhere, and saying that he's going to, because of crime, end quote, because of crime, he's going to send the troops in to take over Washington, D.C. and the police powers that the mayor has and the police chief has are no longer under their authority. They're under the control of the federal government. And so that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. That's where we just keep going down degeneracy road. It's like going down in a whirlpool and just going down and down and down. But that's where we're at. That's what we're dealing with. That's the topic today. And that's the topic we're going to get into. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, you just get your initial. I can go first. You can go first. My initial thoughts is, I'll let you go. But yeah, that's the topic. The siege of Washington, D.C.
No, you can go first.
Basically, again, like I said, mine is going to probably be really, and of course I'll talk more after I hear what you got to say. Mine is pretty much. This so reminds me of my take is from a human point of view, a psychological look at how a human works and how this person works. And it reminded me so much of, I was very young then, it was in the 70s, early to mid 70s, this was going on, this Watergate scandal with one Richard Nixon. And what I believe this narcissist that we have in place right now, this administrator having replaced, learned a valuable lesson. And the lesson was, terrible lesson was, and his mentor taught him, always create chaos. Because chaos will keep your things that you're doing wrong out the news. And then when you're in trouble, never admit, always attack, and be an agent of chaos. And we're talking about what's happening in Washington, D.C., but my take, and I was talking to my wife about when we analyze the situation, this is about the name of one man. Everything that's happening right now is about the name, it's about that administration, it's about the name of one man, and that is Epstein. Because what's happening right now, you have a degenerate that wants to do everything in his power, which he has a lot of power as president, my God, to get that out of the news, to get that out to get people and the legacy media is so dumb. And they're just like a kid. Well, I'm not going to offend kids like that because they're just, no, it's like when you just point and they just follow. You point here and they just follow. They don't ask no questions. This is all how this is narcissist 101. Always change the subject. Always create chaos. Create another story. Diversions, illusion. Even the judge yesterday said, and this not time, and when he was trying to do this with the Epstein files, this is a diversion. You're trying to create illusion. This is not transparency. This is not about crime in Washington D.C. There's a 30-year low crime rate in Washington D.C. This is not about crime in Washington D.C. This is about a chaos agent who's just so desperate to get Epstein out the news that he's creating these stories, and he knows the legacy media are dumb, stupid, white supremacists. They're just gonna follow along and go with it because that's all they want is chaos. Because all they want is to get eyeballs wherever the media realm they want, whether it's listening, podcast, whether it's a mainstream, whatever their platform, they want to get eyeballs. So they don't care how it affects the country. So when I see this happening, I just laugh at it because I know what he's doing. He wants to create chaos. He wants to create, and then this administration, his second term, he has people around him that are all for it, that are helping him, enabling him to create this chaos and confusion to try to get away from this story, which going back to Nixon, Nixon was at a time where there was still enough people of some character that say, Mr. Nixon, you're done. You got one or two options. You can resign or we can impeach you and then convict you. You got till 12 o'clock, whatever day, I think it was August 8th and 73 to do it. That's it. No more discussions. That will never happen now. That is untenable now because he's got people around him who will have a press conference like they did yesterday. And we're watching with cold just relief that an American president is using federal troops to take over an American city with no asking from the city, with no request from the city, no nothing. He just, I'm going to take over because I want to change the story. I need to change the narrative. I need to change the script. I need to get Epstein off the front pages. And my final take is, it's all, and this word gives me such comfort. I was telling my wife about that, and she always brings this point. There's one person in the United States of America. Every time I see these press conferences, every time I see this chaos, every time I see people all up in arms and he's doing all this stuff, there's one person in this country that I believe, a black woman named Kamala Harris, can have perfect peace. Because see, I wasn't running. She told you this was going to happen. She stood in front of the White House at the lips and told you this man wants to be a petty tyrant. He told you that he wanted to be a dictator on one. So everything that's happening now is not any shock and awe. And so I am not getting myself all up in arms. Besides this one point, then I'll let you talk. Sorry. Stay off the streets, black people. Mm-hmm. Period. Anywhere. Texas, California, Oklahoma, Atlanta, anywhere in this nation. Stay at home. I seen one stupid post saying, at night, go out there and bang some pots and pans and go on your front line. That's not a protest, that's stupidity. If my neighbors at 2:00 in the morning start bringing their pots and pans and keeping me up, keep my wife, I'm calling the police. That's called disturbance of peace. That's not a protest. See, that's what people do when they get caught up in this stuff. But you got to see it for what it is. This is his playbook. I need to get Epstein off the front page. I've already made a quid pro quo with Maxwell. I got her in a camp right now here in Bryan, Texas. She's going on a work release. A sex offender can go on a work release. So I got to get this off the mainstream. So my thing is the country going to fall for it again? Are you going to fall for this again? And I just hated that you got a black woman, black mayor in Washington, and a black police chief woman. We know why this is happening. It's because white supremacy is working as designed. So that's my initial thoughts on the matter.
So the felon sending military into majority black cities is literal hypocrisy. When President Obama was in office, all of these red states were collectively shouting about states' rights. Right. States' rights, right, when it came to things like Obamacare, which was basically our compromise from universal health care. Right. Obamacare, if you remember, is riffing off of Mitt Romney's Romney Care. Right. So President Obama, being the pragmatic, intelligent thinker he is, felt that nationalizing a type of health care that was championed by Mitt Romney, a Republican, would be an easier sell to push America closer to ultimately what I believe everyone's goal is, which is universal health care. America is not a superpower, especially now, but we are one of the least developed countries in this very simple thing, universal health care. There are other countries that have had it, and it's been successful for them. So, yeah, I'm just riffing off of what you said there. But for me, when I look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., is this hypocrisy, this glaring hypocrisy that while red states could have yelled about states' rights under President Obama in the White House, the current felon in the White House is doing the opposite of that. Now, D.C. on a whole, statistically, there are more black residents than white residents. Mm-hmm. And when you go deeper into the data of the black residents, the black representation in D.C., it varies between 80 and 90% of them are unhoused or homeless. Mm-hmm. Why does this matter? Because very recently, Trump said, and the media printed, the precise way he wanted to criminalize homelessness. Mm-hmm. He wants to institutionalize people against their will, which is against mm-hmm. the law. He wants to institutionalize them against their will, and he has repeatedly criminalized being unhoused by calling anyone who is homeless all sorts of derogatory names and terms. Mm-hmm. This is concerning, and I'll go back to it. But when we think about where the felon is sending the military and increasing police presence, majority of them are black cities. The next one he wants to attack is Oakland, California. Mm-hmm. You and I have spoken about Oakland extensively. So this is by design. This is not, this is intentional, okay? Mm-hmm. We knew this when we read Project 2025. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing, you said yourself, is America are they gonna mess up again? Absolutely, absolutely. Because if there's one thing white people want, is never to share a single crumb with black people. Right. So we can't have universal health care. We'll never have it because of them, the same people who elected the felon twice. We have to be smart about this. We can't excuse systemic and institutionalized racism because it's uncomfortable or it makes people feel bad. I don't care. And when you look at it intelligently, it always comes down to that. why didn't white people unpack racism? Why didn't they dismantle it? Yelling and screaming and banging pots is stupidity. It's just as stupid as knitting those vulgar hats and doing a women's march for women's rights. And literally, after that stupid performative garbage that those white women did, women's rights were taken away. What did they accomplish? Nothing. They got their pictures for Instagram to show that they are politically active. But the reality of it is white women did this to us. White people did this to us. Mm-hmm. They're the reason, and they're never going to be the solution. So we have to, as smart as we are, figure out a way to work around it. Because if there's one thing Black people know how to do, it's survive. Because we're resilient and we're smarter than them. And that's what makes them angry. That's why they're doing all the things they're doing. Because our existence in this world, I said this before on the other edition of your podcast, our mere excellence offends them because they had a 400-year head start, and there's so many of them who are so mediocre and they never lived up to their expectations, even when they got a head start. Our existence in the world irritates the demons in them because they're angry that their great-great-grandfathers didn't kill us when we were on the plantations, that we still exist, that we're still in their faces, that we're moving into their neighborhoods, that we're in their workplace, that we can all shop in the same stores together and we don't have to be deferential to them. That's an affront to them. And so I challenge you to honestly look at everything this administration is doing, who it's targeting, and why. Washington, D.C. is already over-policed. Look it up. So not only are they over-policed, they have staffing shortages. Mm-hmm. This was before he sent the military there. So they're over-policed. They have staffing shortages. They had a police reform commission who wanted to recommend downsizing the force. And so my question is, if Washington, D.C. is over-policed by the felon's own admission, it's so crime-ridden, why would adding more to it help if it's been over-policed all this time? Mm-hmm. Again, ask yourself the question, why are they doing what they're doing? Who are they targeting? Because that doesn't make sense, right? It's a logical fallacy. Washington, D.C. was already over-policed before that was even a flicker in his eye. January 6th happened. Where was the police? We have Harry Dunn and all the other January 6th Capitol Police, which is not the same thing as the police in D.C. We have all these men standing up for, they didn't have backup when they needed it. Why weren't they called? You know, this violent white supremacist mob who we were told a bunch of lies that they were tourists. But now that there's this awareness that DC is predominantly Black. So this is all out of the Nazi handbook. I want you to think logically about the people who were working in the fields, the migrants, who are paying taxes, who are getting exploited for their labor, unfairly paid, no benefits, blah, blah, blah. They were the scapegoat for, they're taking all of our welfare, they're using all the benefits, yet it's white people who are screaming and crying on the internet that Trump cut their food stamps. Trump cut their welfare. So which one is it? It doesn't make sense. Now I want you to consider, of the population in Washington, which is majority Black, a large percentage of them self-identified in the census that they are unhoused. Why does this matter? Because I want you to really think about why he's doing it, because that's important. I'm not going to tell anyone what to think. You're smart enough to think it on your own. I'm only going to give you the breadcrumbs to get there. When you look at that stupid bill that passed. It's getting $170 billion over 4 years. But when you look at how much it costs to create low income or free housing for the unhoused population, it's actually not that much. It's about $1 to $4 billion. So if we did like a small, if we pulled a small sample and we housed those people, that's what it would cost. That's not a lot of money. And then let's look at why people are unhoused. Childcare costs, lack of job, lack of resources for dependence on drugs and alcohol, which is not a crime in itself. That is not a crime, and it is nothing to be ashamed of. There should be resources to help people if they seek care. But with our healthcare system in shambles, what happens to that? Why do I bring this up? Rush Limbaugh, the original European hate speech, built nothing, destroyed America. He was a drug addict. And he was feeding hate to America. And he was rewarded by the felon with a Medal of Honor. But if you're not white and you're not racist, you should be institutionalized against your will. Make that make sense. I'm done. Medicine will give you life. Your warrior, let's get this right.